Thanks for joining us today for a new episode of the Holistic Selling Podcast. I'm happy to be joined today by Jonathan Kvarfordt. Jonathan is a recognized thought leader in AI-powered go-to-market strategy, sales enablement, and revenue transformation, currently helping drive go-to-market innovation at OneMind. Jonathan's expertise spans AI strategy, sales coaching, enablement, revenue operations, and organizational transformation, with a strong emphasis on helping revenue teams scale through AI rather than simply automate existing processes. Jonathan hosts the Go-to-Market AI podcast and co-hosts the State of Sales Enablement podcast, where he interviews leading AI founders, go-to-market executives, and practitioners on the future of enterprise selling. Widely respected within the sales enablement community, Jonathan has earned industry recognition for pioneering AI adoption in B2B revenue organizations while actively educating thousands of go-to-market professionals through his content, speaking, and coaching. You can see why I very much look forward to discussing with Jonathan today the impact of AI on go-to-market organizations and sales productivity. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show today. Anything you would like to add to your introduction?
No, you did phenomenal. I appreciate it. I just want to say thank you, Bernard, for having me and for everyone listening in. I know you have lots of other things to do, but it means a lot you to tune in because Bernard's the man, and I appreciate the time just being able to hang out with you. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan. As you know by now, I created the Holistic Selling Operating System to help you improve the productivity of your customer-facing teams. How? By helping you align your entire organization from culture to strategies, tactics, and operational processes with one goal, which is to deliver extraordinary value to your customers and prospects at every touch point. So, Jonathan, we share the same passion for helping the sales teams be more successful. One quote I captured from the OneMind website is that research consistently shows that internal friction, not buyer objections, accounts for most B2B cycle delay, with roughly 75% of the drag coming from inside the company. That is exactly the problem that holistic selling is addressing. So you and I are fully aligned. Let me ask you one first question, which is that OneMind was founded by Amanda Kalo, who was ex-CEO of Six Sense. So going back in time, and I believe the company was founded in 2024, why was OneMind started? What is the problem that she and the leadership team at OneMind was targeting to solve when the company was created?
Well, I'll tell you from her own story to me because I was not there when this happened. So she was the founder of Six Sense. And so her story goes that she created Six Sense to find buyers, and she created OneMind to delight and close buyers. That's where her line is. So she has unfinished business, as she would say if she was on the podcast. Her focus was really asking the question of how can we make the experience better for buyers, which we believe as a company that as you make the buyer experience better and help to delight whoever's coming to your website or coming to sales conversations, et cetera, the better that you're able to do that, the more likelihood you are to succeed because you're not trying to optimize for your own team or for what's best for you. You're optimizing what's best for the buyer. So that's where our fundamental belief is. And everything that we do revolves around that one core belief.
I think that's, again, very aligned with the purpose of holistic selling as well. Your intent is to redesign the buyer journey itself instead of layering AI on top of whatever current sales model an organization might be leveraging. So your positioning is very interesting. You are not positioning AI as an assistant to the sales team. You're positioning the OneMind, what you call superhumans, as the only tool needed to run the buyer journey from first touch to close deal. A OneMind superhuman, as I read on your website, can qualify buyers, deliver personalized demos, handle pricing objections, and move deals towards close in real time. It is built to serve the customer directly, with the human joining the conversation when strategic value is required. That's very different from the positioning that previous guests on the Holistic Selling podcast have advocated, which is that selling requires a human emotional connection and AI is there to help. So Can you elaborate on your position? I think it's very
Sure.
unique in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's easy when you hear that at first glance to think of it's a human replacement story, and that is not what we're trying to do. Again, the goal, the mission is to create a better buyer experience. So the question we have to do is say, okay, what's the experience now? So if anyone's done any type of buying in B2B, you know what usually the journey is you do probably right now some sort of research in Claude, Perplexity, Copilot, whatever tool you have. Then by the time you whittle down your options of whatever you're trying to buy to 3 or 4 people, then you go to the website and you get met there by an awareness based experience, which means you have a lead magnet, a demo form, probably some videos here and there, or you have to peruse through the blog and try and figure out if you can find the answers to the questions you're asking that you couldn't find on AI chat. So because you won't be able to, you'll have to go into the inbound, which means you'll be met by some sort of SDR who will do a follow up with you, maybe some automation. And then that person will have to qualify you, go through BANT, medic, whatever. They have to ask you questions, and then they find you worthy to be able to go to the next step, which you meet with an AE. And they have to ask you questions, make sure it's good, maybe do a high level demo, but more than likely you don't have the answers yet. And then you get to a solutions engineer that could then finally answer the questions you're trying to get to 5 weeks before. So this journey is not a good, pleasant experience. So the question is, do we really want to put buyers through that experience? Is that the best we can do? And my answer is no, it's not. And it's not about replacing humans. It's saying, what is the best journey for the buyer? And I personally believe that the future is B2B buyers focused, meaning that the better you can optimize for them to have a good experience, the better you're going to succeed. So the question is, what if someone who's in research mode and spent hours in an AI conversation about you and your category went to your website and was met instead by a very intelligent, very good, very deep, able to have a conversation superhuman? They go through everything you want to ask, a full-on demo, all this stuff. And maybe you found out through that process that that technology wasn't the right one, and maybe you found out it was the right one. So then the company can either move forward someone who was like, yeah, this is awesome, or they can push out people who are not a right fit for them in the first place anyways, and have a whole lot of time not wasted. So in that process, that changes the entire buyer's game. Now, segue with this, have what I just described to you. On the other side of it is AI without our use case. AI is drastically changing everything. And it would be probably not correct to say that SDRs, AEs, solution engineers, that their roles as they are right now are going to stay that way forever. I don't think anyone sees that. What we're seeing internally is that things are shifting to where a lot of the stuff coming off of their plates of tasks or roles, like again, let's just take the inbound SDR, can be done with AI. And a lot of our customers, instead of just laying off a bunch of inbound SDRs, what they're doing is they're moving them to outbound or they're moving them to AEs. So it's more of a talent optimization versus a talent replacement story. And I'm finding that over and over and over as we talk to different customers. It's not like saying, just get rid of everybody. It's like saying, no, we need human talent. We need that relationship. Where do we need it that makes the best buyer experience? The other side of it too is a lot of this depends on the size. With HubSpot, for example, they had a place where they had a segment of people who were coming in, buying the technology, very small SMB business, but they had no support. HubSpot could not budget-wise support these people buying with CSMs or people because it just was no economic model that made sense. So they put a superhuman there, and it took care of not only the onboarding, but the selling and the upselling of those motions. So it goes from free trial to actually paid. And they've had amazing results where the superhuman is doing the work, comparatively speaking, of 83 SDRs and 19 solution engineers. But we never replaced anyone because there's no one there in the first place. So we have to use those comparisons to say this is the work being done, but there was no human there to do that in the first place because they couldn't afford to do it before. And I think that's where we're trying to get to, is that AI unlocks this whole other category of what could have been done before, and then allows the humans to really do what they're good at, which is the relationship. Because like AI, not that you couldn't have a relationship with AI, because that's another conversation for another day, but at least in sales, like, there are things that current state you need, like multi-stakeholder management and political power of what happens inside the company, and having that relationship. So at 12 o'clock on one of the quarters, when your champion has a problem, you can call you and say, hey, I got a problem. Like, there's all these things that happen inside of sales you need a human for, but there's also a ton of things happening inside of sales that no one really enjoys anyways. Why would you want to force them to do that? And then two, it's the things that it's better experience for the buyer. So it's not just the things saying, let's give the crap jobs to AI. It's saying, what about the buyer in this conversation? What can we give to them? So it's not just getting rid of the crap jobs for the seller, but let's make the best experience we can for the buyer. Why are we not doing that and asking that question more often? And why are we not willing to be less egotistical about it and say, you're right, humans aren't good in the spot. Let's put a good AI here to make it a better experience. That was a long answer to your question, but Hope that helps.
Very good to hear your point of view. Obviously, it's still a combination of AI and humans interacting together. So, and I think you've already answered this next question, but just to reiterate the difference between the two, what do you see that humans still do better than AI, and vice versa? What do you believe AI does better than humans?
Well, when it comes to sales, again, I'll segment it by size. A lot of the SMB, high motion PLG type stuff is usually better pretty much the entire journey with AI. Like think about your e-commerce experience. When you bought 11 Labs or OpenAI or Claude, you probably never have talked to a human about that. You went through the entire process with some sort of AI help or automatic sign up. So it's really thinking, how much can we make that experience into mid-market or enterprise levels? Can we recreate that if we could? And so far, what we're seeing is a lot of it in bigger tech buys you can't yet. And not because the AI is not capable. And that's the thing I think I want people to hear loud and clear. AI can do a lot more than you think it can. But the real question is that what is needed to make the best buy experience? So we have a team of human sellers. We're hiring more and more every day. And what they're doing is, let's just say, for example, if we took the sales process of 1 through 7, the AI, our Mindy, is doing the work of not only a meetings booked qualification, but from stage 1 and 2 and 3. So by the time someone gets to a seller with us and they've already had 1 or 2 conversations with Mindy, they're technically at a stage 2 or 3 of a sales process because we have all the qualification, they've answered all the questions, they've had a demo, and now they're ready for something more advanced. They're farther into the sales process than the meetings booked. But that means that the talents and skills you need from a human has shrunk, but they're also deeper, which means you have to be better at relationships. You have to be better at emotional intelligence. You have to be better at multi-stakeholder management. The team we have is exceptional when it comes to EQ, and they don't have to worry about a lot of the first part because a lot of the first part of the sales process is done by Mindy, which means it changes the skill set you hire for. So we're not seeing humans being let go. We're seeing them being needed more because of so much AI being around. People want and need this more strategic relationship-based thing, but they need it at the right time. And I think that's the one difference is that when you throw people in the process where someone's in research mode, they're like, I don't want to talk to someone yet. I'm not ready. Versus them saying, I've done my research, I've talked to a superhuman, I'm ready now to talk to someone. Those two paths are way different. And I think being able to optimize for that, both with your human talent and then with your AI, is where you can find a lot of magic in.
Very much like this notion of leveraging human sellers at the right time to create that deep emotional connection with the various stakeholders on the buying team. Without imposing on them the need to talk to a human when they're in their research and preliminary phase. So very well said. Now, in order to enable those AI superhumans to deliver that content to the buying team, I would assume that a lot of content has to be built within the enterprise to feed that AI interaction. So how is that content being built? Who's in charge of building it? And how is that being maintained? Is it maintained within the One Mind solution? Is it maintained outside of it and provided to the AI superhumans by way of an API connection? Could you take me through, if you will, the backstage experience of content production, content curation that is then being used by the AI superhumans to inform the buying team?
Yeah, there's a lot of IP in this, so I'll try to give you the most that I can without giving away some IP. But the basic gist is it comes down to 2, maybe 3 categories. The main one is integrations. So we can integrate with Notion or Google Drive or whatever knowledge base might be. We integrate also with like Seismic and enablement programs. We can get the content from each team to make it easier on them. Then the platform itself can ingest all types of content from Excels to PDFs to docs to skill.md files. You name it, we can take a ton of stuff so it can be housed inside of there. And then what we do is we have a format or a flow. So when someone gets onboarded, we make sure we have some of the basics like what's your company about, what's your product, what's your ICP. And if you have that in other places, we just integrate it in and we just point it to the right direction. And if you don't, we help you develop it so that we know how to give the guardrails for the superhuman, because that's one thing most people have a problem with is how do I make sure that it is accurate and not going to hallucinate and say something crazy? That's our sweet spot, is that we pride ourselves on having what we call, it's called a hallucination rate of 99.5% hallucination rate, which means that it does not hallucinate. Very, very small. The point is, though, is it's very, very powerful, and we could pretty much ingest a ton of stuff, and we do it in a way so that we're not limited by context windows, because we use a lot of, again, AI technology and RAG systems and other stuff so that you can put in a ton of content and not have to worry about drift or hallucinations or any other stuff that other tech may have.
Right. And I'm sure the content also has to pass some degree of compliance
Yes.
with obviously branding guidelines, but also regulations.
Yep.
Is that the correct assumption?
That's on the brand side. So they have to tell us what that is because we don't know their brand or their guidelines. But yes, the assumption is they're giving us items that we can actually use. And we also have a way that we can say, what is necessary for context, but not presentable or talkable about, and what's other stuff you can talk about and can present. So like, for example, if you have, let's just say most people on Superhumans talk about competition of a company versus somebody else. And with ours, for example, we have some slides that we have approved to show against us with competitors. But in the brain of it, we have documents and documents of us versus this competitor that we don't want it to be talked about, but we want it for context. So it's in the brain so that when they're talking to someone, they go, oh, I should talk about this, or I shouldn't say this about this one person, but it's not something it says out loud. So pretty cool.
So what's very interesting also here, and you've alluded to this already, is that AI superhumans are going to take over or play the lead role at certain stages of the sales cycle. So with that in mind, what would you see as the impact of OneMind and AI superhumans on the go-to-market business development and sales organization going forward? Which roles does the AI OneMind superhuman reinforce versus replace potentially at which stage of the sales cycle? And if you had the opportunity to build a go-to-market organization from scratch, how different would that organization be with the use of OneMind and AI superhumans?
Well, I'm going to put this a little bit different context instead of replacement. So I think there's going to be two different ways. In AI right now, and I'm saying this from a point of, I have the Go-to-Market Academy. I've had 10,000 people, both leaders and others, go through the academy to learn AI skills for go-to-market. I've advised dozens of companies on go-to-market strategy, and I've been in 3 or 4 companies now. The last one was Momentum, bought by Salesforce, and now I'm at OneMind. So I've been in this space and talking to leaders about this for a long time. And I see 2 options. One is you use AI to do what you used to do better, faster, easier, cheaper. So same old sales process, same old whatever, you're doing it faster or better. And that's not a wrong strategy, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just saying that's one option. The second option is let's transform what's happening and do it in a totally different way. So a lot of people who have a problem with AI that can do different things like what we can do are coming from, I want to do the old way faster type of lens. And I'm saying, but there's a new way. There's a transformation way we can think about how we can reuse talent that's different. And you have to be willing to think outside the box, because I believe that people who are willing to do outside the box and to do something new that again is benefit for the buyer are the ones who will do it faster and win more. So for an example, and this is my argument to most people, is that you tell me how many people right now have a solutions engineer type level expert that's a human that sits on the website right now and answers every question that comes into someone. How many people have that? 0. No one has that. You can't scale that. Now you have inbound SDRs, but the question is an inbound SDR, a 22-year-old sitting at a computer, talk to someone who may not know all the answers to the questions, have to use some FAQ docs they could or could not use? Is that the best experience you want to do? The website is the most underperforming employee you have in your most trafficked, most underperforming website that anyone has. Why in the world would you put anything less than your best on the one place that has more traffic than anywhere else? That's my first question. So again, the transformation is, do you either use your human and optimize it better, faster, easier, better, cheaper? Or what if the website was an actual employee? And I just mean that as in saying, does it perform as better as you would as an employee? Do you measure it that way? And can you give it that ability to actually perform like an employee by giving an AI that has the depth and breadth of what a superhuman can do, as an example? Second one is the ride along. So right now we have internally, we have 2 sales engineers who are humans. We have one ride along superhuman, which is a sales engineer AI that rides along with 15 sales reps. And so 80% of what's going on inside the team is answered by and fielded by the ride along solutions engineer. The other 20%, which requires creative or a more strategic solutioning, is the humans. That's the difference, is that right now, most teams are, number one, understaffed, so they don't have enough people to help them. And number 2, the solutions engineers, I know this from experience from past companies, most of the calls they're on are not strategic and they're not creative. They're answering the same questions they would over and over and over again because it's inside their brain. So the question is, how do we expand one of your most powerful and expert level people in your entire sales org, which is the solution or sales engineer? We're not here to replace them. We're here to scale them and give them the ability where they can be in the best room at the best time with the best solution, because that's the only people who can do it. They're hard to hire. These are really hard, talented people to hire. And if you can get it to a point where all they do is the 20% of deals that are creative or strategic, why would you not want to do that? Because again, let's just say about the other experience with the sales reps who have a ride along, we're onboarding 5 or 6 people right now. They're brand new. They're going to get on a call where they don't know what they're doing. It becomes a safety net. They can say, hey, Nigel, tell me about the SOC 2 compliance, whatever thing that I can't remember. And it covers the basis and answers the question for the buyer so they have a good experience. The sales rep doesn't look like an idiot and feel dumb. And it saves the time from the solution engineer so they can do what they need to do, which is strategic and creative. So again, when we say everyone wins, that's what we mean. It's like, how do we make it so everyone involved with this process can win with AI and also, again, have the best experience they can for the buyer? Does that help?
It absolutely does. So, is it correct to say that the two roles that the AI superhuman that OneMind is positioning in the market, the two roles that will be most impacted are the SDR role and the solution engineer role?
I don't know if impact is the right word. I think it's the place you can see the most impact right now from an AI perspective. But like I said, there's been many companies, for example, Xperity. Xperity is one where they put an inbound superhuman and they took that inbound, there was an inbound team and they moved them to outbound and they upgraded one person to AE. They didn't lay anybody off. So it's like, are they complaining? They got paid better and they got an upgrade. So they're not complaining. So it's
Right.
easy to think they replaced the role. But the question is, were they really happy there in the first place? And is that best experience for the buyer? No and no.
Back to the buyer experience, another quote on your website was that typically the buyer experience goes from an SDR to an AE to an SE to a CSM.
Yep.
4 handoffs, 4 chances of context loss, 4 moments where a buyer re-explains what they've already said.
Yes.
And I think the value proposition of OneMind is to replace all those handoffs by one continuous presence guided by an AI superhuman so the buyer doesn't get impacted by the loss of fidelity, if you will, of the information they've shared at every step in the process. And all that information gets preserved and leveraged through the presence of that AI superhuman. Is that a fair depiction of one of the points of value of OneMind?
Yes, we call it the handoff tax. How do we reduce the handoff tax? That's correct.
I love that term, the handoff tax. I very much like what you said about there's 2 ways to use AI. Use AI to do things the old way, better, faster, cheaper, or leveraging AI to transform the process, which is obviously the direction that OneMind is taking, is transforming the role of go-to-market organizations to enable a much better buyer journey than the old way could ever have delivered. So I think there's
Right.
definitely a tremendous amount of value there. So you mentioned a couple of customers already. You have an
Mhm.
impressive list of customers on the OneMind website, just to name a few: SalesLoft, Coupa, Outreach, HubSpot, Zoom Info, and Seismic. Can you share with the audience today the typical use cases that those companies have deployed and the positive business outcomes that they have been able to achieve?
Yeah, it depends obviously on each customer because we are flexible enough to where the question is if you had a solutions engineer type of AI that could answer questions and have the ability to do all the different things, where would you want to put it? And the answer is everywhere, wherever you can. So I'll go through a couple if it's okay. Zoomify wanted to put a superhuman behind the form of asking for a demo. They have the same website they have now. And as you go through the journey and you go through a demo web form of saying, hey, I want a demo, instead of being met by SDR, they say, hey, after they put the information in and they say, thank you for your information, it says, do you want to get a demo right now? They said, yes, click the button, pops open a superhuman. And from there, they've been able to see within, I think it was like the first month, they had a 14x ROI return on just that, just giving someone an expert level experience from letting them just be there and say, do you want a demo now? Yes, I do. And then that way they went down the process further and they're warmer for the sales team because they already went through a lot of the stuff they would have gone through with an AE or an SDR at the beginning of the call, which is awesome. So that's one. Two is Seismic. Seismic is a fascinating one because they did things a little bit differently than others, where they did something that I feel like a lot more people will do, whereas they let the people choose their own journey. So if you go to the Seismic website, they have several options. They have get a demo, they have watch some case study videos, and they have get a demo with their superhuman. And so they just gave people the option of saying, you can still talk to a human. Here's a button for that, but here's an AI superhuman you can talk to too. Here's a button for that. And within the first 90 days, they saw $1.5 million of pipeline come in the first 90 days by just giving the option. It's just like, they're not forcing anyone down the pipe. They're saying, do you want to talk to one? Here it is. So, and I think more and more people are going to have that where they say, they give people the choice. Like when you go to travel, you take an Uber, you can take a Waymo, you can rent a car, just give them the option and see what paths they go down. You can see very positive results as a result of giving the option. That's two use cases. Second is Alteryx. So Alteryx just did a public thing for us. I'm going to talk about use cases you talked about publicly, where obviously they have one on the website right now. If you go to Alteryx, Alteryx, you'll be met by Annie, who is their superhuman, and she'll go through a full demo of the entire website for people. And they also have a ride along, which is called Atlas. That's the one that joins all the sales calls and helps people on sales calls for very technical conversations. And then the last one is, I can't remember the name, but it's their CSM. And that's the one that's kind of like the same concept as the website one, but instead it's in the back end. So if someone has a question on the technology or the product or whatever, instead of having to wait a week for a CSM to have a schedule, not that they still wouldn't meet with them, they just ask and say, hey, do you want to have help right now from your superhuman? And bam, right then and there, they have help in support. That saves time for the CSM and saves time for the customer because they're like, I got help right now. And it mitigates a whole ticket creation problem solution time frame. So again, it's always about thinking, where can you put your best AI in front of someone? And as people do that, the more and more you do that, people prefer it because it's an answer they can get right now versus having to wait for somebody's schedule or calendar that may not know the option anyways. And again, that's not saying CSMs are not important or relevant. They absolutely are, but it always comes back down to the relationship and the strategy and what's actually helping the business move forward, not the little, how do I answer this product thing that takes advanced persons usually that most AI can't do, but we can. Our AI is advanced enough to do some pretty advanced technical solutioning for people, but it's basically on the product. And then you let the CSMs focus on the relationship and the bigger strategic outcomes. Does that make sense?
It does absolutely make sense. As I listen to your explanation as to how the AI superhuman functions and the use cases deployed by your customers, I come back to the point of content creation. And I've seen this happen time and time again in SaaS B2B companies.
Mhm.
In order for the AI superhumans to be helpful, they need to be fed, obviously, content that gets created by the product marketing team, the sales enablement team, etc. And in every one of the companies I've worked for, content was always lean or outdated.
Yep.
So if I were a company interested in implementing One Mind, what would you say are the prerequisites that you would advise this company to have available for One Mind to be successfully deployed? And would content creation be one of those prerequisites?
Content can be very broad. So I'm going to get more specific to make sure it's not overwhelming for people. A lot of the times we have some companies who are very similar to yours, but they don't have a lot of visual content. They have a lot of text, like product documentation content, and that works great. So like, even if it's just like documentation of your products, like your FAQs, or even like your product documentation in your product documentation for customers, like that alone is great, which most people have that. Then it really comes down to asking the question, but what about, again, the buyer experience? What experience does the brand want to create for their buyers? And so the question that we usually have people think about is, do you want to have someone who just, or I should say a superhuman that just talks? Or do you want it to have a better experience of like being able to demo and to be able to show slides and be able to show videos and all of the stuff that does require content, which I would say is very important because you're trying to optimize for the buyer. You need more than just text. To me, that's not a superhuman problem. That's a company problem. Because I'm in marketing, I'm in enablement for years and years and years, and my job is to create that content. So I know it's possible. It's just being willing to be able to invest in it. And every company I've seen who does that always outperforms anybody else who's not willing to do that. So I would say it's a strategic requirement, not just a superhuman one, just FYI. But besides that, like as long as you have the integrations that you have, we also can look at and read the entire website, as long as the website, blogs, product pages, technical guides, discoveries, that kind of stuff can be consumed. Like pretty much anything you have, we can use. The question is really about the buyer experience visually and otherwise. And that's what may require a little bit of creation. But we have some customers who just recorded like a couple of demo videos, which took them maybe a couple hours. And then others, they made a 15 slide deck and that's all they had. And it's working great. So it doesn't take a lot. We have a ton of content, but it doesn't have to be this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of slides. It just needs to be, what do you want the buyer to see or know or experience? Create that because you're going to need that anyways, and then let us have access to it.
Does it not require a transformation on the product marketing and sales enablement side to build content that is not only inside out driven, that talks about product capabilities, but also content that's outside in driven, that is focusing on business outcomes and customer challenges and pain points, which very often is missing in typical sales enablement. So is that also critical for a company to actually create content that is outside in driven, that is business outcome driven, that helps the AI superhumans leverage content that allows them to find those problems and pain points and qualify a customer leveraging that type of content? Is that a fair assessment that AI superhumans will work better if that content is made available to them?
Correct. I've been in enablement for a long time, so I know this world very, very, very well. And sadly, a lot of enablement teams are more optimized for learnings and how many butts are in seats for that kind of stuff. That was never the enablement I ran. I was always about what's the buyer experience, what's the win ratios, what's the ACV, how do I help performance? Like that's the questions I was asking. And then the best product marketing teams I've either led or been a part of are the ones who always answer the exact question you're asking, which is, what does the ICP, what is the buyer, what can we provide that's viable? What's the stuff that they need to make a good decision? Anyone else who's too self-focused and all they talk about is themselves with no thought of the buyer, it's just a matter of time before they're going to be gone because it's just selfishness in any layer, personally or professionally, just doesn't work very well.
I fully agree. I think that's still a skill set that needs to be promoted within the industry, where we still have sales enablement and product marketing team that focus on product related content instead of customer related content, business outcome
Yes.
related content, which I believe will be a really important prerequisite for an AI superhuman to be able to do qualification the right way in the absence of a human presence. So we're on the same page there. So let me summarize the conversation. Obviously, I love your
Sure.
tagline of making the buyer experience better. And I totally subscribe to that. It's about the buyer. It's not about the seller. It's always about them, not about us. And the buyers will do business with companies that help them through the process that make their
Mhm.
buying experience better. So I think
Yeah.
that is a fantastic purpose that One Mind is pursuing. As you said, it's not a human replacement journey. It really is a journey of enhancing and augmenting the capacity of the team while providing a better buyer experience. We talked about the impact on the SDR role, the AE role, the SC role, the CSM role. We talked about AI being used to just do it the old way, better, faster, which is not what you're recommending. You're recommending to really use AI to transform the role of
Yeah.
the extended go-to-market team to once again help make the buyer experience better. I appreciate that you shared also some examples of customer use cases and the positive business outcomes they've been able to achieve leveraging the One Mind technology. There's definitely a big transformation going on in the industry where we're going to see AI being leveraged more and more in ways that will augment the capacity of the humans that are part of the go-to-market and sales teams. So congratulations on everything that the One Mind team has done. Congratulations on your role in the industry as well. So to close the podcast today, Jonathan, what is your call to actions for the audience? What would you like the audience to take away from this podcast?
I'll tell the same advice I give everyone, which is take off your leader hat, eyes, enablement, whoever is listening to this podcast, and go through your journey like a buyer and just take an honest look at how good or not it is. And ask the questions on, okay, if I went to the website, how fast can I find answers to very specific questions? Two, is how much time does it take for me to hear from a human on the team? Three, did my answers get questioned when I finally did get answered by a human? And four, would I recommend this to a friend? And if those aren't yes, 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 you need to have a very hard look at what's going on. Obviously, I'd love to talk to you about One Mind and how we can help, but there's a lot of things you can do by just giving time and attention to the buyer's journey that you could optimize by not buying anything whatsoever, by just giving it attention. So my ask is go through your journey, figure out what is good or not good for your buyer, and being humble and willing enough to look at and say, this needs to change and make it better.
I absolutely love this as a lead behind today, Jonathan. So thank you so much for all the insights that you shared with
Of
us
course.
today. I wish you all the best and we'll definitely stay in touch. I look forward to continuing to follow your journey and the value you're going to deliver for the industry. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.